What's up, 49er fans? We are back discussing John Lynch's press conference. Been a little while. What did he say? What didn't he say? Stay tuned. We'll all get into it.
Welcome, everybody. Let's go, Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.
What's up, 49er fans? I'm Jason Aponte. I'm back. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live the first day of draft week. And we have our annual before the draft, pre-draft press conference in which John Lynch generally does this alone. The year that he didn't do it was the year that the 49ers traded up to 3 to eventually draft Trey Lance. And that's when Kyle Shanahan was there to speak about the thought process. But it usually is just John Lynch at this point. I realize I think the press conference is still going on. I did see Jake Brendel speak right after, but for me, it was more about just making sure I understood what John Lynch had to say, and then come in and talk with you guys about it. So I think, first of all, the thing that I got the most out of it was really nothing. And again, when you talk about, I guess we should just start like right away with the whole Trey Lance trade thing. When you get into the timeline of this trade and everything as well too, none of it ever made sense. Now, we did find out recently, I believe it was Trey Lance that divulged this himself, that he is actually cleared to play, has been for a month. So he's good. He's good to go. So Trey Lance is cleared to play. Now, the thing is, why would you trade somebody when your other quarterback is still not healthy, even though he was waving at the Giants game? And then the other thing is, in a year in which you lost 3 and 4 quarterbacks, yeah, let's just give quarterbacks away, and let's have one less. I think we all understand, and I think the one thing that I took from this was when Lamar Jackson was brought up, John Lynch said, yeah, you have to look into everything in terms of that because you wouldn't be doing your job, but we're confident in Brock. And that's the first word that came out of his mouth, this first line. And he said, and the room. But I think it's clear as day. This is Brock Purdy's team. It is. When he's healthy, ready to go, it's his team. And that's how they want to proceed going forward. But after you watch this team last season bring 3 and 4 quarterbacks in and make sure they had enough to continue to play football, just the idea of giving away Trey Lance never makes any sense, especially considering we don't know if Brock is going to be returning to his regular play, if he'll be ready to go right away. So none of that ever made sense. One other thing, I think we can kind of take a look at what the 49ers had done when Jimmy Garoppolo was on the block and they were looking to trade him as kind of a point of they're not just going to give away a quarterback, no matter who it is, right? I mean, if the 49ers would have gotten what they liked for Jimmy Garoppolo, he would have gone, but they didn't, and he came back. So for me, again, this just feels like nothing. It felt like something that was obvious. It felt like something that could have been surmised by just doing the timeline and understanding how this organization operates. And I did think it was kind of funny that John Lynch said that there's more smoke around things and that there's not as many people calling as people would believe. So Ian Rappaport comes out today and says, nothing's imminent and you have to wait for Brock Purdy to be healthy. Well, duh. And I think I was telling you that as soon as we heard something about Trey Lance. Well, duh, Ian Rappaport. That's not breaking news. That's common sense. It's common sense. You do not trade a quarterback away when the other quarterback's not ready. When that quarterback's ready, when you feel confident, then maybe you revisit. But the longer you wait to trade Trey Lance, it would have to be to a team that, one, has an injury in the quarterback room during training camp, or two is just going to have him as a straight up backup because now he has to learn a new system. He has to get involved. Like, it just takes too long. If the time to trade quarterbacks is early on so they can get in the building for this first wave that everybody's in there for, that John Lynch is there for, that Brock is there for right now, that Trey's there for right now, quarterbacks need to start from here with all the playbook and everybody in the building. The later you get there, the harder it is for you to pick things up. And it doesn't behoove you from a development portion. Like, Trey Lance needs to play. So let's trade him in August, right before the season starts, when he's going to either have to hurry up and learn or not play at all. The timeline just doesn't match up, man. So It is what it is. John Lynch wasn't going to tell you anything. I think there was a lot of discussion for some reason about why don't they ask questions. You can ask whatever question you want. John Lynch is media trained. It's not that the 49ers don't leak, because I despise that saying. They just don't tell you anything that you didn't already know, or they won't give you an obvious answer for. When has Lynch or Kyle or anybody ever said anything that you were like, oh my God, he just said this and he's outright saying that? Like, never. Everything's very generic. We love the guys in our room. We're excited to have him back. He also reiterated that he thought that Trey Lance would be here all year. Like, generic answers. That's what John Lynch is here for. He's incredibly media trained. He's very good at dodging the questions. Even, I believe it was Grant asked the question and he just said no. That's it. Didn't speak more, didn't elaborate. When you start to elaborate is when you're getting yourself into a point where you may let something slip. Short and sweet, generic speak. That was going to be this press conference. That was it. Shout out to Juan. Thank you so much for the donation. I don't know if you had a question or anything like that. If you did, make sure you put it in here and I'll take it. But again, thank you for the donation. About 6 minutes in, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. But I didn't really think that you were going to get anything. And I don't know. He's been here since 2017. What's changed? Why this year would this be the year that all of a sudden he's going to tell you, yeah, we're going to draft this guy. We're going to make sure we tell everybody our draft plans. Yeah, you know what? We've got 3 offers in on Trey as well, too. We're definitely looking to move him. What made you think that anything like that or anything close to that was going to come out of that man's mouth? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Tyler says, Jason, I would love if they were transparent. They're transparent in obvious situations. And I'm going to go back to Peyton's thing here. Kyle does example when he said Jimmy isn't coming back. But yeah, Peyton, that was after you already have Trey Lance and you have Brock Purdy. That wasn't groundbreaking. You know when that would have been more impactful? The year before, when we all thought they were going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. We all thought that teams were going to be running up to try to give them capital. That would have been more impactful than saying something that's obvious. They're transparent when it's obvious. They're transparent when there are no more options. There was only a few logical things that he could say about Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think, again, when you see what Brock Purdy had done, when you see that they still have Trey Lance, yeah, no doubt in my mind that Jimmy was gone. I mean, it's really just more about your expectations. That's it. And what we have fallen into as a fan base, and I say we, all of us, is we're analyzing words, we're analyzing statements, and we're trying to figure out if there's a deeper meaning. But for the most part, when John Lynch speaks, for the most part, I would say even on the other side, it's more Kyle. Like when Kyle speaks and he says something, we are like, oh, well, he's only putting a spin on it. But then a few months later, you'll find out, yeah, he was absolutely telling the truth at that point. So again, this is a draft press conference. If you ask John Lynch directly, and I love this about like, if I'm in the room, I'm asking, and you'd get a media trained answer and you'd get nothing and you'd waste your question. You could ask John Lynch, what are you targeting at 99? Edge, offensive line, or safety? Well, we're going to do a lot of due diligence and we're going to evaluate. There's a lot of great talent in here. It depends on how the board falls, and we're going to do what's best to bring in the guys that we believe fit this regime. Boom, I'm John Lynch. I don't know what you expected. He's been here since 2017. He's incredibly media savvy. He's incredibly good at the DC dip and twirl is what I like to call it. You ask him a question, you're trying to get to something a little bit deeper, but he gives you a surface level answer, and it's still satisfactory because it still answered the question. But you try to lead him somewhere else, and it's not going to happen. That's why John Lynch is who he is, and that's why he's very good at what he does. So this whole outrage of like, you need to ask harder questions. Well, people asked. What about Trey Lance in the trade talk? I think that's a little bit overblown, basically, John Lynch said. Well, the only other thing that I could think of that maybe might have been a little bit sensationalized, and I will say this, one thing that I kind of noticed was, remember we're talking transparency right here, right? And I thought it was really cool to hear John Lynch actually speak about them actually trying to trade Mike McGlinchey because they realized that he wasn't going to be able to be re-signed, right? Which kind of leads me to this part. And shout out to Joey, man, a member again. Appreciate you, bro. It kind of leads you to the Brandon Ayuk thing, Because the question was, well, you just said about Mike McGlinchey, the reason that we can't keep him is because you had Trent Williams, you had this guy. And he goes, we understand that we can't pay everyone, but he's a big part of what we want to do today and going forward. Again, generic answer. What is he supposed to say? No, I think we really got to move on from Brandon Ayuk. I don't think he's coming back. I don't think there's any way to parse those words and find out what he really meant, because they are very much in a day-to-day thing. You don't know what's going to happen. God forbid something happens to Ayuk this season with an injury or something like that, then that changes the whole dynamic of the extension. He has until next Monday to announce the two fifth-year options of Kinlaw and Ayuk. He had some nice things to say about Kinlaw. I doubt they're going to take Kinlaw. But I think you have to pick up Ayuk's fifth-year option for whatever it is, and then try to hammer out an extension from there. So again, there's not really much in this press conference to find that's sensational, that is mind-blowing, because that's just not how they operate. Now, if you're frustrated that they aren't as forthcoming, or maybe don't give as many frank answers and they stick to generic things, and each of them has their own favorite saying, like John Lynch is due diligence, Kyle is and we love the guys in those buildings, like those type of terms. You can be frustrated that they're not doing that, but being frustrated with the people that are asking the questions, that did ask the questions. There was 3 or 4 people. Matt Mayoko started it, boom, with Trey Lance. He goes, I know this isn't a drive question. Boom. Matt asked the question. Grant asked the question. John's ready for all of it. John knows what to say. John knows what not to say. Now, if you want to get into the body language thing and he's like scratching and doing this, okay. But for me, it's like, I didn't expect anything different. I really didn't. And even if I didn't listen, because I did, I picked up Averly. I was driving back. I was listening to the press conference the other way. Even if I didn't listen and I jumped on here, I would have bet dollars to donuts that you would have given. I would have asked you guys to tell me the question. I would have given you similar answers to how Lynch says it. It's just too many instances of just how it is. Now, I understand other markets in New York, they'll eat you alive. They're going to keep going at you. They're going to keep going at you, keep going at you, keep going at you. That's not Bay Area. It's not how they work. I don't have a clue as to why they're not as hard. Maybe because New Yorkers are just more uptight. You see me pop off for no reason, all that stuff. Or maybe we're a little bit more tick, tick, boom. And we want to get more out of you. But in terms of this team and the way that they operate their press conferences, that was status quo. There was nothing about that. Was boring. That was boring. And a lot of people tuned in because they wanted to hear how he would react to Trey's question, all of those things. For me, all of the answers that John gave were pretty much in line with everything that he said. We love Trey. We want to keep him here. Sure, people are calling, but we haven't had much smoke. And he keeps mentioning Brock is the first guy. And he talked about Ayuk. And I think that's where there's a little bit more gray area. If you really want to get to dissecting things, I think that's really where the real meat of the words are there. And that's where we can always come back to and look. But everything that was said was pretty much in line with everything they've been saying. And again, Brock's doing well with his recovery. That's great. You love to hear that as well, that he's hitting all the check marks. You love to hear that again. But the more and more you hear it, it's they want it to be Brock. And if Brock's healthy, it's going to be him. It is. And that's not my opinion. It is my opinion. I'm just giving you, that's not even reading tea leaves. It feels like they're spray painting it on the wall every time that they speak. And why not, right? 8 games, Brock was great. But I don't think they're in the business of just getting rid of Trey Lance for nothing, because if they were, they would have done that last year with Jimmy Garoppolo. But you, after having a season where every single quarterback goes down, that doesn't make sense for you to make that move now. So I do think you see Trey stay. I do think that whatever the timeline is for Brock, you're going to see Trey compete. If it comes down to him and Darnold, I still have Trey beating out Darnold. But when Brock's ready to go, it's Brock's team. I think that's it, man. For better or worse, whether we agree or not. I mean, I don't know how you can really argue when you looked at how the offense played, when you looked at how many games they won. I'm sure you can, make an argument and say, well, that was just this sample size. Do you think it's going to continue? Okay, that's fine. But I do think he deserves to keep going because of how well he played. And I hate that for Trey. But if you're going to keep Trey around, then keep him around because he is a high upside backup quarterback for you once Brock Purdy's ready. So 15 minutes in, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. Talking John Lynch's press conference of word salad, which is my favorite kind of salad. And again, I think for me, I've kind of just, just based off of since 2017 and every press conference we've ever watched, the spiciest quote that we've ever gotten was Kyle saying that he didn't know if the world was going to end or if anybody's going to be alive. Other than that, everything is just very generic. Everything's very down the middle, matter of fact. I don't know what more people expected. And I did think that the media members asked tough questions and asked questions about trading and things like that. But again, in a press conference before the draft, you weren't going to get any draft strategy. You weren't going to get any players' names because that makes no sense. If there is a trade for Trey Lance in the air or if it's coming, you're not going to get any answer about that. Yes, we're trying to trade him. Remember, he talked about, someone asked, I think it was Matt Maiocco, about him being transparent because he said, because John Lynch told the story about when Mike McGlinchey was being shopped and he talked about like, hey, we're going to start fielding some calls on you because they knew he wasn't coming back. Matt kind of asked that question to see, hey, have you talked to Trey and to try to see if you were going to get something? And Lynch said, I've spoken to him. I've been completely transparent. He knows exactly where we are, and I'll leave it at that. That's it. That's it. You weren't going to get, I told them the Titans called, and I told them the Vikings called, and I told them, and then he even made the joke. We've been linked to everybody. We've been linked to everybody. So I just don't know what people expected from these questions. I do think the right questions were asked. I do think there weren't too many softball questions. I think they went right for Trey Lance, and then, you got a few more after that. But I'm not certain what people were expecting when you have this long track record of John Lynch just being a media member, understanding media training, understanding what to say, what not to say. Maybe doesn't understand body language, scratching and doing this and the telltale signs of that, because that's what cops do to catch criminals, right? When they bring you in interrogation. If you're touching or if you're looking up at one side, looking up at the other side, it tells you it's the imagination portion of your brain or the fact portion of your brain. Those type of things, that's different. But in terms of the words you were going to get, I'm not sure what people expected. So Corey says, I interpreted the Purdy talk differently. Okay. That was not a clear or confident response to his timeline and injury, not to mention the elbow scratching. Well, Corey, I think, and thank you for the donation. I think, again, because I think it was Grant that asked about him not playing. And I kind of had the same reaction that John Lynch did about Brock's a humble dude. He's just talking about what could happen, not what he's trying to just put out there and give himself an unfair timeline. So I think the part that I looked at was him talking about the timeline, checkpoints, all that stuff. He's doing that. He's checking all the boxes. He's doing well. But when they brought up Lamar Jackson and they said, did you look into Lamar Jackson? He said, yeah, of course you have to look into it, and you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't. But we're confident in Brock. And then I think he caught himself and said, in that room that we have, we love the guys that we have. But he said Brock first. He said Brock first. There's never any mention of, we love Trey. We're excited to see Trey compete and see what happens if Brock comes back. No, everything leads with him. Everything leads with him. Everything starts with him. And I think that's what you've been hearing from him, from Kyle, from George Kittle, from everybody that has been able to get a mic in front of them since the season ended. I think that's all what you've kind of been getting, and it's the same type of answer. So for me, I just think that right now, it's like he is going to be over there. And yeah, there it is. Yep. Let's see. Breaking news. The Packers and Jets have agreed to a mega trade, sending 4-time MVP to the Jets. Finally, the deal includes a second rounder this year, a first round pick swap this year, and a conditional first. There you go. So that's done. I mean, the Packers are out of, contention anyway, but yeah, I mean, good for the Jets, man. At least that's done. At least we know he's not coming back now. So yeah, I mean, again, I think the expectations that people have for these press conferences put all of the people. Yeah, I did know it. I called Carr to the Saints, Rodgers to the Jets, and Jimmy to the Raiders. All three of them. And I know exactly what episode I said it on, State of the Franchise. But yeah, it's more about just, again, setting your expectations and understanding, man, this is not going to be anything other than a masterclass of media training and everything. It's just it never was going to be anything forthcoming. John's too smart for that. John was by himself, but I mean, that's good. Look, I like it for the Jets, man. I think they're going to be interesting. I mean, there's something worse than being a bad football team. Being a boring football team is worse than I think, but the Jets won't be boring at all, man. They got a bunch of weapons, great defense. I love it. I can't wait to see them play football, and maybe they'll take over MetLife. But yeah, I like it for the Jets. I mean, it is what it is. The Packers stayed firm on what they wanted, and the Jets had to come up off it, because if they didn't find a way to get Alex Rodriguez, Aaron Rodgers, then you're back to Zach Wilson, and I think you guys know that they don't want that to happen. So it's cool, man. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a good year. I think all this exodus of talent leaving from the NFC to the AFC is interesting, and it just plays to the 49ers. Again, the 49ers have the third best odds of winning the Super Bowl, and we still don't know who the quarterback is starting week 1. So just goes to speak with the roster. But, when you listen to Lynch talk, and he said something else that I thought was kind of interesting. He talked about, in the same breath that it was asked about Lamar Jackson, in which he said, we looked at him, but we like the guys we have because we're allowed to have a roster that is so complete. He's talking about the cost efficiency of quarterback. This is the way that they're doing business right now. When you look at what Brock did and you're paying him so little, that is a super huge win, right? So much cap percentage goes to quarterbacks. The 49ers don't have that problem. They have 3 guys that cost together, I believe, as a cap hit, $13 million. And Brock Purdy's not even one of the top 52, so he's not even a cap hit at all for the 49ers. That's how you're able to sign Trent Williams and keep Fred Warner and sign George Kittle and trade for McCaffrey and have all these big contracts on your book, because you're not paying quarterbacks. So they're also evaluating it in this way. Trey doesn't really cost much right now. Brock costs nothing. Sam has really cost nothing. So this is the way you keep this roster together. You just need one of those guys to be healthy and win games. So, I mean, I think again, it's more about really just understanding what was going to happen, what's been happening at these press conferences. John Lynch never says anything. He's too good, too media trained. I really didn't expect anything but this. Like I said, if I didn't even listen while I was driving, let's say I didn't listen and we got on here and I would have said, all right, go ask the questions. And they asked them to me, I would have probably given you similar answers right off the bat, like along those lines with him. So yeah. Let's see. My boy, Case 49, shout out to Ponzi, everyone. Appreciate you. James says, it's simple. If Brock can start at the beginning of the year, he starts. If not, Trey goes and gets a chance to show what he's got and maybe take the job. That's it. And I don't think that Trey's going anywhere, because, again, like when you're looking at the timeline, first of all, Brock has to be healthy. He can show you everything that he can in practice. But if he's not performing in the game, okay, well, you need to keep Trey around. And then, again, if you trade Trey in training camp, you're basically sending him to a place where he's going to have to be a bench player, because he can't take time to grasp the playbook, or he's going to be forced to just go in there and just get thrown into the fire. And I don't know if either of those are the best way for him to develop. At least you can say that if he's here and Brock's starting and he's behind him, he's still in the same system. He's still learning. He's still understanding the system just in case. And again, he's a high upside backup. He's not Josh Johnson. Like, that's not the thing that he is. So again, I think everything that you heard from John Lynch today was status quo. I didn't walk away with anything aside from the Mike McGlinchey stuff, where they actually like admitted to openly trying to trade him because they knew they weren't going to sign him back. The Brandon Ayuk thing is kind of out there. And I did find it interesting that when someone said, well, you haven't signed Nick Bosa yet, what if teams start calling? And he said, yeah, that hotline's closed. So it's kind of funny, right? I mean, and again, Nick Bosa is a cornerstone player, right? And you don't get rid of him. But I think it's funny how the door's closed on some of these players, but we'll listen. And I kind of heard John before say, well, we listen to everything. Well, you're not listening on Nick Bosa either. So that's a little bit of contradictory stuff. So, but either way, again, I'm going to keep it short. I thought this was a very much status quo press conference. I really didn't take too much away from it. I thought John was just going to do this the entire time. So, I mean, it is what it is, man. I think the media members did a good job this time. Oh, get out of here, Croc. I do think that the media answers you got were to be expected. And again, you knew Lynch wasn't going to talk draft strategy. You knew he wasn't going to talk about players that they're targeting, what they're planning to do. He was even asked about a trade up, and he said, I think we're good at 99, 101, 102, 155 because I feel so strongly about the depth. He goes, but if there's guys that are gone, then we may have to look at somebody and go target somebody. And he also talked about not just evaluating players in the third round closer to that time, because he said that he never would have thought that Drake Jackson would have been there at 61 last year. So they've done a lot of due diligence. Again, take a shot every time you hear that from John Lynch, but they've done it with the players that they really like and some players that possibly could fall. You never know what could happen on draft night, and I think that's kind of what he was talking about. But again, this really felt like just very generic, nothing too spectacular. I'm eager to watch people dissect quotes that are black and white and turn it into whatever they want to spin it into, right? But I think that there's not really too much more to read into this other than the words that were laid out, especially when there's only a certain amount of things that can be said, particularly about the draft, and if there is a trade, any of those things going on with Trey Lance. So I thought it was kind of boring. Hope this episode wasn't boring, but 26 minutes in, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for when we go live. It's draft week. All week, we're going to be back doing 49ers Afternoon Report, but I just wanted to make sure I got my thoughts out there about John Lynch. Shout out to all you guys. Hope you had a great weekend and enjoy the draft. Also, don't get too far into trying to figure out what words meant when the words are right there in front of you, and they usually mean exactly what was said. So I'm out of here for Jason. Peace.
Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.